Hello, everybody. This is a bit of a bonus event. We ran the Page Builder Summit last week, and we thought it would be very, very nice just to sort of keep it all going. And to that effect, I am joined by somebody that I have yet to meet. I'm joined by Georgina Reeder. Hello, Georgina.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Apart from the fact that the sun has just come round the corner of my house and made it incredibly bright, but so bright, in fact, that I can't actually see the screen. So forgive.
That's not good. Mine's going the other way. The clouds are coming towards me and it's getting dark. So if I disappear into darkness halfway through this, please forgive me.
That was easy to do, but it was honestly a minute ago, nothing, and now here we are. Anyway, we are here for Georgina to talk to us. It'd be very, very nice if anybody during the course of this would like to drop in any comments. Depending on where you are, what platform you're watching on, then you may have a different process. For example, if you're in a Facebook group, and we're pushing this out to 2 Facebook groups, you will actually have to go to the words in the post above the video, and it'll say, you might even have to click read more, and it'll say something like to permit the presenters. I can't remember what it says, but there's a StreamYard link. Click the StreamYard link, allow Facebook for us to see who you are if you would like to do it that way. If you're over on the WP Build side, then you don't need to do anything apart from be logged into Google, because it's YouTube comments. So if you've got anything you would like to add it as a comment. Might be quite nice to kick off by just sort of saying who you are. If you're watching this live, that'd be very nice. Where you are, the sort of traditional way of starting these things off. And today, Georgina is going to be talking to us about this subject: how to build a podcasting website in one day using Gutenberg. I keep saying Gutenberg. Gutenberg
works too. I kind of like it.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So we do have a couple of comments that have dropped in. So Charlie, hi Charlie. Charlie says hello. That's very nice. Nice of you to join us, Charlie. Thank you. And Taylor also. Hello, Taylor. I don't know if we've met before, but Taylor, very nice to meet you. And yes, hello indeed. Like I say, if anything that Georgina raises during the course of this resonates with you, or you would like to make a comment, or something you're curious about, didn't quite understand, would like a repeat of something, please do say so. Georgina, I don't know if you're planning to introduce yourself during the presentation. If you are, then I won't ask the next question, which is, do you want to introduce yourself quickly, where you are, who you work for, and so on?
I did plan on doing that as part of my presentation, but I can go ahead now, no problem.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm Georgina, and I'm a happiness engineer working for WordPress.com specifically. So that's my kind of wheelhouse, what I'm used to doing, sort of helping people create their sites, fix things, report bugs, all of that wonderful stuff that keeps the internet running. And I've been doing that for 5 years. I'm working in England, where similarly we were talking about the clouds going over. The first thing we talk about over here is the weather. So that's the most important thing you need to know when you live over here.
Well, that's great. Thank you for joining us today. We do have a few more comments. So Amanda, hello. I'm from Michigan. Nice to have you with us. Elaine, thank you for sharing. Oh, there's a few more. Glenn, howdy. Good evening, both. Hello, Glenn. And Kleinfeld, I think. Oh, Kleinfeld Technical Services. You're representing a company. I'm going to quote Groucho. Hello, I must be going. We'll hope to be able to watch this record. You can. We will make sure that these videos are they'll be in the Facebook group. You can watch them there, but also we'll pass them over to WordPress, and then they can do with them as they see fit. Right. Okay. Georgina, I think my time is probably up here. I'm going to be fielding the comments and making sure that everybody behaves themselves, and also just hanging around so that. But at the end, if anybody has asked any questions or anything, we can field those together. But if it's okay with you, I'm going to pass the reins over and leave it to you.
Thank you so much. And yes, on that note, I know based on the topic of this, what I'm about to present to you, it's going to be a lot of information. So if you do have any questions along the way, or if it's just kind of quite a lot of information, don't worry. This is very much a crash course in setting up a podcast using Gutenberg, using WordPress.com specifically. So yes, I've introduced myself. I'm Georgina, and I've been working at WordPress.com for a while. And I've definitely been here to see a lot of the evolution in our current editor, from the original text editor in WP admin to what it is in its current format, which is blocks. And all the awesome tools and the possibilities that go along with that. So while it's all pretty familiar to me, something that isn't so much, funnily enough, is podcasting. I use my voice a little in just sort of general life. I host webinars for WordPress.com on various topics, and I actually do a little voice work on the side. But podcasting is something that I've dived into very recently. I only posted my first episode, I think it was about a week ago now, actually. And while I was in the process of doing that, though, I discovered that actually WordPress and the process, I guess, of creating and displaying a podcast, they actually marry together pretty well, which is how we reach the title of this presentation. Now, I know what you might be thinking by looking at this title. It's a lot. It might be a bit, maybe terrifying is a strong word, a lot to accomplish in the space of one day, and a huge task, or like a mountain to climb, I guess. But I promise you that even if you're starting from square one, it's absolutely doable. And you can create a site to host it in the space of a day, hopefully even less if we're lucky. Gutenberg has specific blocks and tools built in that were created just for this purpose. So I'm going to give you a speed run, as I said, of how to use them and how to get everything up and running. So starting at the beginning, kind of step one, creating your site. Do you need something super fancy with all kinds of visual features, animations, bells and whistles and bright colors? Probably not, to be honest, but it's like being an author, right? The most intimidating thing can be the blank page. And knowing where to even begin, whether that's a blog post or a podcast episode, the two things tie together very closely, as you'll see as we go through this. But either way, the idea still stands. So to run through the site creation process quickly, hopefully you know the process of clicking on switch site, adding a new site, and then you've got your beautiful, amazing site domain that's very, very creative. Podcasting site test is what I've used for this domain, but hopefully it serves the purpose. I've picked a domain, and if you're using WordPress.com specifically, I should clarify on this. The process of adding your podcast to your site will involve uploading audio files, which hopefully you would have recorded outside of this using whatever audio program you use. Audacity is a great free option if you're unsure where to start, but it will involve uploading audio. And for that, on WordPress.com, you would need a paid plan. So just something to be aware of if you're interested. I'm using a premium plan here, but there are various ones if that's something that you would want to do. So we're focusing as well on a WordPress theme here, since we want to get our first episode up and running kind of pretty quickly with the tools that we already have. In this case, this site is using the 2021 theme. I've got the kind of information page up here, so you can get an idea of what it looks like in its demo state. It's a really beautiful theme, actually. It's very open, kind of a blank canvas theme. And the way you can arrange blocks on it is very freeform, actually, which I really love. So I thought we'd focus on that in this demo. But I would say, as much as this gives a lot of space to play around with, in theory, any theme, honestly, any theme that you can pick or think of, can be used to display your podcast in the way I'll be showing you here. If you're looking for something very specifically structured for podcasts, I would say potentially consider the Spearhead theme, which I have open to show you very briefly. It's here. This is a theme that we have designed specifically for displaying podcasts. As you can see here in the demo, we've got episodes listed one by one on the homepage. So if that's something kind of more clean and linear that you'd like to use, please try and consider the Spearhead theme if you would like. I guess another question that also stems off from this is, how do you know which theme works best for creating a podcast? I'd say that once again, any theme can potentially be arranged to work for you. The important thing, no matter which theme you're using, is that your listeners won't need to click around too much or hunt through millions of pages to access and listen to your episodes. That's the main thing. You want each episode to be accessible and there for their listening pleasure, if you like. The aim here is to make sure that they know who you are, what your podcast is, and what kind of story you're intending to tell. It's great to submit your podcast to Apple, Google, all of those other providers that you can think of. But having a home base, like a website, is just as important. Why is that? Not everyone uses the same platforms to share podcasts with friends and family, and so your site would be a great place to unify everything. So, with that said, we've got our basic step one site created right here. You might have created a couple of pages too. I'll just show you over here. If we click on pages in the dashboard, all apart from the most recent one were automatically created pages. We'll go into this a little bit later on, but you've got your pages created and that's great. At this point, we're going to work on getting your podcast feed set up and ready to run on the site that you've just created. And then we're going to display that podcast on your homepage. And that's where it's going to be nice and immediately accessible for everyone to view and listen to. Be sure to have those audio files ready, as I mentioned before. However many audio files you have, to be honest, maybe even one episode, that's totally okay. Just be sure that they're uploaded in an accepted format. So MP3 is always good. WAV will work as well. M4A, I believe, is also accepted, and OGG as well. All of those are accepted audio formats that you can upload in. I would lean towards MP3 or WAV just to narrow that down. But yes, those are accepted formats. So let's familiarize ourselves over here with the dashboard. Before we do anything with our site, we want to go ahead and configure our podcast so that it's ready to share. You can do this by heading over here to settings. I'll go ahead and click on that. And then where we want to go is writing. And then we want to scroll down just a little bit. Let's go a little bit further than halfway. You'll see right here, nice and clearly signposted, a section called podcasting. This section is super small to begin with because nothing has been set up here because we're starting from scratch. So let's go ahead and click the setup button and I'll show you exactly how this works. So what we need to do here is, when you first head here, yeah, here we go. It's very small and kind of unassuming. Once we've clicked on the setup button, this is like the deep, in-depth stuff. You can see right here, most of this page is grayed out, and that's okay. It won't be in a moment, but we can, before we move on to that, we can do something really important that will come into play later on, which is assign a category. Why is that important? It'll come up again later, but defining a category for your podcast now is what will help you to categorize your podcast episode posts later on and allow your feed to recognize them as actual podcast episodes. And so in this instance, once again, I was super creative and I made a category called podcasting. You can add your new category right here if you'd like. I've already gone ahead and created it for you. So what I'm going to do is check podcasting and magically everything else will open up to you. Now here's where it gets super fun. You can spot something called the RSS feed right up here. I'm going to already go ahead and click on the copy button there. We'll again come back to this later because it's super important as we get things set up over here. For now, let's run through these options a little further down. What we're going to do here is provide details about our show in general. So we can add a cover image here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've got a few little things uploaded to my media library, beautiful stock images that I'm never good enough to take myself. So let's choose this maybe as our podcasting icon, move it around a little bit. Done. Perfect. So we have our cover image. We have, what else here? A site title, podcasting site test. Once again, please feel free to be a lot more creative than I am in my podcasting details. The subtitle is also pretty important. That's a super brief description of what your show is about. So a podcast about podcasting, very meta. And now we're going to move down to podcast topics. Now, these are slightly different to the category we've just created in that they aren't directly related to WordPress.com. Once this is created or the topics have been assigned, this is what defines how your podcast is classified in podcasting apps. Think about what's most relevant to your show's subject, as well as what will get you found with social media and SEO and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and choose some hopefully relevant topics, not beauty. This is definitely not a beauty podcast. I'm going to go ahead and just choose technology. You don't even have to fill all of these out if it's not relevant to you, but the 3 fields are there just in case you'd like to specify. There's also, if we scroll down a little bit, an option for explicit content if you would like to make that available. It's worth noting that if you do have explicit content, it will need to be flagged. Otherwise, it could risk episodes being taken down and all kinds of stressful things. So if it does include explicit content, please go ahead and flag it as such. The host, which is me, and a summary. Once again, here you can be super creative and descriptive about what the subject is of your podcast as a whole, just the general overarching description of what you intend to do and achieve and talk about for your podcast. So I'm gonna say I will host interviews about podcasting. I wonder if there are podcasts out there about podcasting, about podcasts. Who knows? Something like that. It could go on forever and ever. All right, just so we've got that. Email address for some services, this is required. So I would say go ahead and add that anyway, whether you think you need it or not. I've just added my email address in there. And a copyright, once again, you can add your name. The keywords are deprecated. That's no longer needed. And that is all set. So I'm going to go ahead and save my settings. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and copy that RSS link one more time because we will need it. So copy and then scroll all the way down and save your settings. And that is all set. Your podcast, your feed for your podcast at the very least, is configured and ready to go. So the next thing we want to do here is head back to the main dashboard. What we want to do is create our first podcast episode. So to do that, what we need to do is create a new post. So I'm going to head over here to posts. I've already created a first episode post just as an example, but what you would do in general is click over here to add new post and it will open up your editor. Loading nice and quickly, I love it. And then here you can see a bit of a glimpse of the 2021 theme in action in your post editor. Up here you can add the title. Up here I would recommend adding the actual title of the episode that you're uploading to this post. So first episode, but once again, say for instance, if you're creating a podcast about baking, I always use baking as my example because cake. If you're doing an episode about a specific chocolate cake recipe, for example, go ahead and specify that in the title. So we've got that ready. And now we also want to add audio to this episode. The most important thing is the Gutenberg audio block. I've already added it here, but I'll just go ahead and show you how I went about that. So when you're down here in your editor, you'll notice that there's the little plus sign over here. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. It says add block, which is super helpful. And then you'll get a few suggestions for most used blocks, but what we want to search for is audio. And you have a few different options here for various purposes, but what we want is the built-in Gutenberg audio block. I won't add it again since it's already here, and this is what it will look like when it's added. From here, if you have your audio on your computer, you can click the upload button and upload from there. Or if it's in your media library, you can go ahead and do that too. So mine's in my media library. I'll go ahead and add that. And then insert. And there it is. That's my very, very mini podcast episode that I've got ready to go. So we can add some content below this audio file. You can add a caption if you would like. I wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary. I'd say something like, in this episode, we talk about podcasting. Not cake, unfortunately. And so on and so on. You can be descriptive here, let people know what they're about to listen to, introduce guests if you have them, if you're planning on interviewing anybody as part of your podcast, and if they have any relevant links to share to their own podcasts or sites or whatever it is, feel free to go ahead and add those there for promotion purposes if you would like. So the context, description of the episode, links for your guests. Now, remember that category that we set up in our podcast settings earlier. Here's where that comes into play. What we need to do is head over here to the right-hand side, and we want to click on Post. This is for your block settings, and we want to go into the Post settings. You can see there's just a bunch of information over here, but what we want, you can probably guess, is categories. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you can see I have only 2 categories here. What we want to do is uncheck uncategorized first of all, because an uncategorized category is not helpful to us in this case. And then make sure podcasting is checked. This is what allows the system to recognize this specifically as a podcast episode, and we'll need that later for a different block. So let's also, I would say, go ahead and add a featured image to this post. This will also display really nicely in the block that's coming up. So featured image, set a featured image, and I'm going to go to my media library. Let's go ahead with the same image, just for consistency's sake. And here we go. It's right here. You'll see it when everything is correctly published at the end. So that is all set. It'll be shared, the featured image as well will be shared on your site and on podcast apps when the episode is submitted later on. So I'm going to go ahead, and if this is a new post, this button will say publish, but since this is an existing post, it will say update. So I'm going to go ahead and update this because it's ready to go. And you're all set. With that, the first episode of your podcast is done, ready to go. And however many audio links you have, you can create as many episodes at once as you feel comfortable. Perhaps you have it on a weekly schedule, a bi-weekly schedule, a monthly schedule, whatever your cadence is that works for you, the same kind of process applies. So create your post, add the audio block, make sure it's categorized, published, and that is set in terms of the episodes. So we still need somewhere to display our podcast beautifully on our site. There's no better way to do that than on your homepage. We're going to add an awesome Gutenberg block, which is the podcast player block, which does exactly what it says. So I'm going to get out of here very quickly now that we're all published. And I'm going to go to pages this time because we want our homepage. I have a couple here. I've got one just to show you in terms of the things you can do with different styles of blocks. It's a little bit of a Frankenstein, which is why I haven't set it as the actual homepage. The one that I've set as my homepage is much more beautiful to look at and makes more sense. So I'll show you both to show you how that works out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this example homepage. And there'll be a bunch of blocks on here that you can use. So you've got your huge title, Welcome to My Podcast. And we've got right here the podcast player block. Now, if you want to add this, it's the same process as the audio block. So I'm going to, hopefully, just to show you, insert an area after add the block, and then you want to search for, don't even need to search for it, it's right there, podcast player. If you click on that, or if it's not there, you search for it and then you click on it, this is what you will be presented with. Now, remember the RSS feed URL we had before? You can probably guess exactly where that's going to go from here. So hopefully it's all still copied. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it there. Perfect. And then I'm going to go ahead and embed it. So here we go. And let it load. And as if by magic, here is our episode that we've just published. If you have more episodes published, you will see them all, just listed one below the other in the same block. And as you continue publishing episode posts, they will automatically show in this block going forward. You don't need to do anything manual with this. So let's scroll a little bit further down. It's nice and clean and clear, the podcast player block. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It has your audio player, your description, your cover image if you have one. But maybe you want something a little bit fancy. That's totally okay and totally doable, I would say. So as I scroll a little bit further down my beautiful Frankenstein page, I'll show you some mock-ups of arrangements of blocks that you can potentially try. So here I've got some really nice visual options, actually. This giant thing here, if I click it, is the cover block. Now, this is a huge image that can go across the width of your page. There's usually a bit of a darker filter over it as well, which you can remove if you would like, but just so that whatever content you put on top of it is visible. And that's the beauty of the cover block. Whatever image you put in there, you can always put another block on top of a cover block. So in this case, I've added just a small paragraph block to say episode 1 and then an audio block. Now, this is a bit more of a manual process, admittedly. You would need to add a new audio block every time. You would need to upload your audio file each time you want to use this layout. If you want to put your podcast player block on top of the cover block instead, absolutely, go ahead. That also works. But that just kind of gives you the idea. So if I go ahead and add my second episode here, you can see how that works. So the audio player kind of appears on top of it. I'll show you how the podcast player looks on top of this for curiosity's sake, my own included. So we're going to go ahead and add the podcast player and paste our feed. And there you go, it's embedded on top of your cover block. So please go ahead and feel free to play around with that layout if you like. If you like the look of it, for sure, give it a try. One thing I should do as well, while I've got the podcast player block selected, is just have a quick run through of the settings that are available with that block. So if we take a look over here under the block settings, you've got all kinds of criteria that you can use. So number of items is the number of episodes that will display at one time. After it goes past that number, the oldest episode will kind of fall off and not display anymore. So we've got it set to 5, which is totally fine. You can also display specific episodes if you know the title that you want to display. You can choose to show cover art or not, the episode title, the description, play with colors, depending on what you would like to do, all of those kinds of things. So you can really play around with how that looks on your site. So that is a cover block. I'll scroll down a bit more because I believe, yes, here we go. Another thing that we have available for WordPress is something called patterns. Now, what are patterns? They are collections of blocks that we have put together for you in kind of mini layouts, if you like. So it's not quite a whole theme, but it's kind of chunks of content that you can use and apply to your site. Now, this right here is a pattern. I'll go ahead and see if I can add an extra on below this, just to show you where you can find it. So insert after, and then I'm going to go ahead and click the add block once again. Oh, maybe not actually. I'm in the wrong place. Let's go up here. So just to go through that again, if you have the space and you want to add a pattern, go up to this blue plus sign over here. Here we go. This is what I'm after. So this block inserter is similar to the one that exists inside your editor, but kind of you can see everything all at once. So aside from, instead of the most used blocks, if you scroll, you can just keep scrolling and look through all of the blocks that we have available. That's a whole other webinar right there. But what we want to focus on is patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. And here we go. There are specific patterns available for this 2021 theme. I'll scroll through a little bit. and you can get an idea. You've got a collage, a full width image, which is very similar to the one I have applied here. And you can keep going, see which kind of layout you like. I'll just keep scrolling. This is the one. Yes, here we go. The full width image with off-center text. So I've gone ahead and clicked this, and it applied itself directly to the page. So let me just close this so you can see that properly. It's a beautiful large image. Once again, you can add text right here in your header, your paragraph block. And then in this case, instead of embedding the audio link directly on top of this huge image block, I've added a button block. Now, if you want to maybe not have your homepage cluttered with so many audio files, you can use this to link to the post where your episode is. If you know the episode link, you can copy that and then click on your button, and then you'll see here a small navigation menu, and this chain link symbol is how you link your button. So you can click on that. Let's give it a try. Episode. Perfect. If you know the title of your episode, that really helps. So I started typing in episode 1 and it popped up for me. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And my button is linked to the first episode. So it's really just kind of up to how you would like to arrange your podcast. If you like the simple layout, totally fine. I know I do. But if you want the image and the beautiful aesthetics, those are just a few options that you can try on your own and just play around with. Don't be afraid to play around with them. That's kind of half of the fun. But yeah, just a few options there. So that is our patterns, our kind of jumble of blocks. But let me now show you the official homepage that I've made for this test site. It's a lot neater than this, I promise you. So here it is. This is a lot cleaner, and this is the beautiful kind of pale, I was going to say pastel green background of the 2021 theme. So you can see here I've got right at the top a nice kind of image block to the right, a header block, and then a paragraph. You can put this in a column block to have the two side by side. But as you scroll down, you can, I haven't even added my RSS feed to this. Let's do that actually before we come back to this homepage. So let me just go back to the page editor really quickly. Let's get out of here. Yeah, we don't want to save those changes. We want to go to our beautiful podcast homepage. Apologies if I'm disappearing into the dark because of the dark clouds. And once this is loaded, let's just make sure we have our RSS feed added to the podcast player. So paste, embed, same as we did before, exactly the same process. Here's our first episode. So while we're here in the editor, let me show you what was used here. So right here at the top, you've got a column block, or I believe this might be a media and text block. Yes, it is. This is the media and text block. What that allows you to do is display kind of exactly what it says, media to one side and text directly next to it, or opposite, or on top of each other, whichever way around you want to do it, which is nice for having an introduction to your podcast if you would like, telling people welcome and what you're all about. And then we scroll down, we've got our podcasting player block, which we've just embedded our all-important RSS feed to. So the episodes will be there for people to listen to. And I've also added here, just a little bit further down, a subscription form block. Now, obviously, you've added this podcast to your site. You want people to listen, right? And you want people to keep coming back for more every time you publish. This blog is super useful for that. So once again, I really love this cover block, don't I? I've added the cover block here just for a bit of visual niceness, and a title to encourage people to subscribe. And once they enter their email address here, they will be notified automatically every time you publish a new post or episode. So that's super useful, and I think it's worth having on the homepage. I've also added here, in case you want this to be a one-page site, it's totally doable. Once again, if we take a look down here, we've got another media and text block with your information about you and what you do, and some social links if you want to add them and have your listeners connect with you that way. That's totally doable. If you want to do that on your homepage, there's absolutely no reason why not. If you want to do it on a separate page, also totally fine. And I've scrolled down. Yep, that's all the way to the bottom. So that's just kind of an idea of what you could potentially do with blocks while displaying your podcast in a pleasing sort of way. I'm going to update this and then reload the original beautiful homepage so you can see that the podcast player is working correctly. So let's go back over here, and I'm going to reload this, hopefully, my sticking keyboard. And here we go. Perfect. So we've got our beautiful big podcast player right here. I'm not going to play my audio because it's not great. It was my my testing audio for this presentation. So your episodes will show up here automatically. You've got the prompt to subscribe, and then you've got a bit of information about you. I've also included up here, as a bit of a side note, if you do want to include that information separately, if you just like to display your podcast on your homepage, totally fine. I would say if you want to have an about page about the podcaster, put that separately and have like a whole chunk of information, that's no problem. One other thing that I would say is super important, aside from your subscription form, is creating a contact page. I've used another pattern block for this, actually. You can see it here, but it's a contact form that's available for anyone who comes across your site if they want to know more about what you're planning on doing in the future or feedback for you on your podcast. They can contact you here using the contact form block, and that will send all form responses directly to the email address that you signed up with to WordPress. So just kind of various ideas there on how to get that set up. But there you go. I mean, that's pretty much a crash course in getting your podcast set up there in less than a day, hopefully even in a matter of hours if you're feeling brave. But your site is up, it's running, it's ready to go. Now, from here, it's up to you to be patient and consistent and publish those podcast episodes regularly. You can do it, and I promise you, your audience is out there. Before we wrap up, I'll briefly touch on how you can go about submitting your podcast to directories, specifically the bigger ones. I've actually got a slide here for you, which I'll leave up for a few minutes just so you can take notes if you would like. So for, yes, Apple and Google, we've created this thing, and now we need to share it with the world. So with both of these, make sure you have that all-important RSS feed link ready to go and handy to submit to them. Yes, leaving this up for a short bit just in case you want to note these URLs down. But if you're interested, and whether you're using WordPress.com or self-hosted WordPress, if you go to the support link at the bottom here, WordPress.com, support audio podcasting, there's more detail about exactly how you can go about submitting your podcast to these services using your RSS feed. So definitely go ahead and take a look at that. Take your time. Good luck with your podcast. I hope you really enjoy creating it and displaying it and finding really super creative ways to go about that. So yes, thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I hope that was useful to you in some way. I hope you learned something new and interesting from my speed run of creating a podcasting site through Gutenberg in one day. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. That was great. That was really, really interesting.
Thanks.
That there's so many similarities from the process that you do to the process that I do.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I could well imagine all the steps being done by me. So, yeah, thank you for that. A couple of questions coming in. By the way,
Sure.
if you do have any questions, I'll just put this up. Whether that's around just general podcasting or the Gutenberg implementation on the .com side, then just put them into the comments, and we should be able to feed them. I can see that there are a few there already. So just a quick reminder about that. But let's take this one. The first one, this got answered later on, but I think it's worth surfacing. So Amanda was curious why at the beginning you inserted the audio block as opposed to the podcast block. She then noticed that you had later used the podcast block, but I still think, what is the primary difference between the audio block and the podcast block, which .com offer?
Sure. I would say the primary difference is automation. So, with the podcast player block, the main thing that you need to focus on is just creating those podcast episodes. For those, you do need to add the audio block to your episode because that's sort of how it works. You need the file to be in that post. Hopefully that makes sense. So that in itself is a little bit of a manual process. But if you're displaying your podcast on your homepage, as we were going through just then, and you want to do that in an automated way, so every time you publish your episode, you don't then need to go back to the homepage, manually add that episode to your homepage for display. The podcast player block will do that for you once the episode is published. So hopefully that makes sense. I hope it does.
Right. So it's a way of consuming the audio over the past X number of episodes that you've created, and it just pops it into one player. I'm sure if you've been around on the web, you've probably seen similar things like that, and it'll show you the most recent episode and all the other ones beneath with the minimum amount of effort. You don't have to go and configure all of that. It just displays it, and you can put it somewhere sensible like you did on your homepage. So that's
exactly.
Nice. Yeah, great. Thank you. Stephen. Hello, Stephen. I don't think we've met before. Nice to meet you. Question, is this just a .com thing? Can it be done on self-hosted WordPress sites?
That's a good question. So as I mentioned at the beginning, WordPress.com is my wheelhouse. I don't know if maybe you can help me out there in terms of whether like the audio and the podcasting player block are available on self-hosted off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can. So the audio player block is available. The podcast player block is not available. But as is so often the case, if you choose to go down the .org route, the self-hosted version, there are ways to do that. You can go and search for third-party solutions which provide similar functionality. The beauty of the solution that we've just been presented with is that it gets rid of a whole bunch of hurdles which you'll have to figure out yourself. In that the .com side has got the RSS bits and pieces all in the settings. So you just go as Georgina did, you upload the image, give yourself a title and so on. You'll have to figure out, depending on which way you do it, which third-party solution you want for, you'd have to figure that out differently. Whereas on the .com side, it's just baked in and you don't have to try very hard, which is quite nice. Yeah. So it is possible, but you have to go through a solution and, juggle which third-party solution you prefer and so on and so forth. But yeah. Is that okay? Right. Charlie says that was excellent. Thank you, George. All I need now is a podcast. Yes.
Just a small detail, just a podcast. But often like that first step is just the biggest struggle. And I mean, as I said, I'm a brand new podcaster. Procrastination, when I tell you that's my middle name, I'm not kidding. It's so easy to overthink. What could I possibly talk about that someone would want to listen to? And I don't know, I would just say the answer to that is whatever you're passionate about. The internet is such a big place. Someone is going to want to listen to what you have to say in the way you say it. So yeah,
good point. It's not a difficult thing to do. Increasingly, there's software coming out which makes the process of creating podcasts easier than it ever was. You don't need expensive equipment. You really can just use. I mean, genuinely, you could use your iPhone or your Android phone, and the audio quality wouldn't be quite as good as if you bought yourself a dedicated microphone and had a dedicated space to record in and so on. But honestly, the barrier is basically your willingness to give it a try.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Elaine, thank you, says, awesome. Thank you for the insight. Do you still need to subscribe to Libsyn with a WP site?
Not the case with WordPress.com. That's absolutely not necessary. Again, not sure on the self-hosted side, but for us, no, it's not necessary. You don't need to do that.
So on the .com side, it looks like they're consuming your audio and putting it into their servers. Exactly. So when you upload the audio, that's the last time you're going to think about it. On the .org side, it's complicated, but you'll you'll end up probably with a third-party solution, and you'll have to go to that third-party solution. Libsyn is one, and then you'll have to come back and paste things into the page or post. So that's kind of why this .com thing is sort of seamless. It's done. It's, you know, you don't have to do two things. You can just do one thing. So
exactly.
that's worth mentioning. Yeah, thank you. Stephen said thanks. Oh, because we answered his question.
Welcome.
Peter Ingersoll, these hands-on demonstrations that go through a process in real time are great. Thanks. Oh, well.
Oh, you're so welcome. I was worried it was just a lot to get through in a short space of time. So I'm so glad that was coherent and made sense. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And the last one we've got for now, depending if another one pops up in a minute. I don't quite know what you mean, Elaine, but let's see if Georgina does. How much space should one allocate for a podcasting site?
That is an interesting question. I would say that depends on a lot of things, including how big your audio files are, and how long you intend for each episode to be. Let me think. With WordPress.com, also depending on the plan you're using with WordPress.com. So just as a quick run through, we have personal, premium, and business. Each one has a certain amount of storage space. I would say, you know, each one has several gigabytes of storage space, so you should be able to get a fair few episodes on there. If you're doing, I don't even know if there are any podcast episodes that are hours long, but if you are doing that, then it may become harder and harder. Case in point. Yeah. But yeah, again, it depends on the size of your audio file, I would say.
One nice tip is to examine ways to think of compressing the audio. If you record it in the highest possible quality, there will be almost zero discernible difference, as if I'm getting myself tied up. If you reduce the quality and listen back, you will consume half of the disk space and you won't be able to hear the difference. So that's just a question of going into Audacity and figuring out what the settings are. Something like 128 kilobits per second is kind of a good one. If you go up to 192 and beyond there, yes, it's better, but honestly, if it's not music, if it's just audio, there's not so much going on that you need to worry about it. Rule of thumb is really you could get about 50 megabytes per hour, roughly.
Oh, wow.
So you could get, 20 episodes out of a gigabyte, which is, you know, if you do one a week, that's half a year, more or less. So
yeah,
you can get quite a lot done.
A lot, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And this is the last one that we have at the moment, and we are kind of running out of time. So this is probably a good way to end it, which really is a good way to end it. Just saying thanks for the clear presentation. It was really clear. I sat and watched every single bit of it, and it was very, very interesting. There was something else. I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm just going to go back and make sure that we do address it, because right at the start, Elaine said, can we get a copy of the slide deck?
So the interesting thing is I actually did most of this in a live WordPress.com site. If you like, I can put something together, because this all exists, and I can take screenshots of the blocks if that's useful to you, and maybe pass it on if that's useful.
Yeah, if Georgina, I'm going to leave it totally in your hands. You are not compelled to do it. It's really up to you. But if you do and you pass it to me, I will pass it on to our audience, and they can make use of it in whichever way they see fit. And sorry, this inevitably happens, doesn't it? You get these questions creeping in. Elaine is doing good work today with the questions. Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine.
If I already have a theme, can the Gutenberg podcasting option be something that can be incorporated?
Absolutely, yeah. The podcasting process that I've just explained to you, and the blocks that are related to it, work with all WordPress themes, third-party themes we do use on WordPress.com, and works great. So that shouldn't be a problem, I would say. Yeah,
you've got no problems whatsoever. All the blocks, if you're on the .com side, all of those blocks should just drop right on top of whatever. But the cover block is a nice way of making it stand out.
I was obsessed with that, wasn't I?
No, it's good. It's really nice because it adds a little bit of interest. Oh, little tip: if you are going to put your podcast player on a page, put it near the top. don't put it at the bottom of all the text that
don't
you've
do
written.
that.
Stick it right near the top, and in a cover block is a good place to put it.
Yeah.
So she said, no, don't worry about that.
Oh,
We'll do a
okay.
transcript, and we can do the transcript, so you don't need to think about it, Georgina. That's all taken care of. And
Thanks
she
so
says,
much.
awesomeness, yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Yay. Clap, clap, clap. Well done. Thank you, Georgina. That was that was very, very cool indeed.
I'm so glad.
If somebody was watching this who's not watching it live, let's say in a few days' time, and they wanted to reach out to you, is there a preferred way of doing that?
Sure. So if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do that. I do have an email address if you would like. It's georgina.reader@automatic.com. So imaginative, I know. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll do my best. As a newbie, I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that. It's right in my wheelhouse. It's about the only thing I actually know anything about. So so that's great. But honestly, Georgina, thanks very much for your time this evening. We had quite a lot of people coming in. Not as many comments as there were people, but that's okay. Thanks for joining us and experiencing how to build a WordPress website with Gutenberg. We'll knock it on the head and say bye-bye. Bye-bye.